Photoshop Project 2 Vintage Car Montage. We are in Stage 2 working with vector tools. I would imagine most of you felt that once we got done with Illustrator, you were never going to have to look at using the drawing tools again. Surprise, surprise. Photoshop has those same tools and we can use them for creating shapes, creating paths, that type of thing. So we are indeed going to be starting by using the Freeform Pen tool. You're going to find the Freeform Pen tool in your Tools panel towards the bottom, and it's going to be nested underneath the Pen tool. So pick that up. Up in your options bar, you are going to make sure that you have path selected, and we want to check the magnetic option, and then next to it there's a little tool indicator, and that is your geometry options button. Curve fit, first of all, we want to set to 2 pixels. The curve fit determines how close the curves are going to match what we're dragging. We want our width to be 50 pixels. The width determines how far from the edge of whatever we're drawing along, how far from that we have to be. So we're setting to be within 50 pixels of the edge. Contrast should be at 10%, and that determines how much variation has to exist between the pixels, so Photoshop defines it, the edge. And frequency is the rate at which Photoshop will drop anchor points. Higher value create more anchor points than lower values. Now, there's a mixed thought on that. Depending on what you're drawing around, you may want more or fewer anchor points. You can always add anchor points yourself by clicking with your mouse. We're going to zoom into it. I'm going to put in 100% down in the field at the bottom. I want to be able to zoom in pretty tight on this, and we are going to outline the entire car. Don't worry about the tires. We're going to add those later. You're going to start where the fender meets the bottom of the car and click to create your first anchor point. And just start dragging your mouse. You don't have to hold your mouse button down. You're just going to start dragging around to follow the shape. You don't have to worry too much about how close you are at this point. And if things bounce out of place and you really want to, you can click to add another anchor point to help define the edge. We're not going to be too worried about how close this is because we'll refine the edge down later. But just follow the entire outside of the edge. When you get to a corner like this, add an anchor point by clicking, and then continue on. When you run out of room on the screen, hold down your space bar and you'll get the hand tool and you'll be able to move the image around. This area is going to be a little tricky. Don't worry too much about it. Again, we will be able to refine this edge later. When you get back to your starting point, you'll see a little circle pop up at the bottom right side of the pen, and just click and that joins and creates your full outline. Open up your Paths panel and you'll see now that you have a work path. It's a temporary path. It exists only until you create another path. We want to save that path and call it Car Outline. Click anywhere in the bottom of the Paths panel to deselect that. Save your file, and we're going to add to our existing path next. Let's move her back to that front tire, and we're going to pick up the pen tool. In your Paths panel, reselect your car outline so you can see it. In your options bar, make sure you have path selected, and we're going to choose to add and combine shapes. If you see the anchor points, click your pen tool again and that will hide them. Otherwise, you can go ahead and add to our selection. We want to click down here where the bumper met the tire, and we're going to just click and start adding anchor points. We're drawing just like we did in Illustrator. So remember, you're going to drag in the direction that you want the curve to go. You can zoom in tighter if you need to, and follow the outline of the tire. As you get closer to the top, you're not going to be able to see it quite as well. Make sure you cross over into the area selected before. We're going to click somewhere up here in the bumper. We want that the two path areas to overlap, and then select back their starting point to close and create the shape. Now you can see over here in our paths that we have now added this other shape to it. We're going to do the same thing again to add another shape to our path outline. We want to this time select to add the rear tire. So again, we're going to have our pen tool, make the car outline active, select to combine shapes, and again, you're going to pick up this section and add to it. So start where the exhaust pipe meets the bottom of the car and click to create your image. Just clicking is going to give you sharp edges. Remember that. You're going to get sharp corners. Clicking and dragging will give you soft, rounded edges. And remember again, you're going to drag in the direction you want to draw, and we're going to click and overlap those shapes. Click off to the side below the paths to deselect, reselect car outline to make sure it's stuck. And there you can see the two paths overlapping. Open the path operation menu in the options bar and choose merge shape components. Our path no longer consists of 3 different shapes. All of the shapes have now been combined into one. Now that first path that we created wasn't exactly a perfect outline of the car. The freeform pen tool is really good for starting to create an odd-shaped path, but we almost always have to edit it and fine-tune the results because it's just not that great. We can use the path selection tool to select an entire path, or we can use the direct selection tool, which are down here, just like we did in Illustrator, to adjust our outline. We can use the Add Anchor Point tool under the Pen tool, just like we could in Illustrator. And you can delete existing points just like we could in Illustrator. So a lot of similarities. We can also convert points from curves to sharp angles or back from a sharp angle by dragging to create a curve. So the next thing we are going to do is start to make refinements. So work your way around the car and use the pen tool to delete or add anchor points. Use the direct selection tool to start dragging and fixing the errors that we have.